Just gotta set up this one.
Al said it.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Representative Al Baldessaro, and I'm the co-host of Who's Looking Out for You. I have today, my normal guest, Janine Notter, Representative, is tied up today in Merrimack, and I have a special co-host today who is running for re-election, who is a outstanding state rep, who is a loud voice for Londonderry and the people of New Hampshire, and that's Representative Dan Tamburello. Dan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, Al.
Yeah, and you know, we have a special guest here today, and I know you wanted to say something. You wanted to add a little flavor in there for a call on to our Democrats
I'd like
in
to
town.
just, again, thank you for having me on, and thank you for all the people that have supported me the past couple terms, past 4 years. It's been wonderful up there, and I've had the opportunity to lead the fight for the people who believe the things that you and I do. But also, I'd also like to reach out to give a shout out to our friends Jerry Connor and Tammy Seekman and tell them God bless and Jesus loves you.
All right, that's awesome. I know that's probably going to kill him, but that's okay. But anyways, hey, we have a special guest today, and I'm honored to have him here. And I endorse this gentleman here, young entrepreneur. I think he has 3 internet businesses up and running. He's been involved in politics. He put a scare in the GOP there when he was going to ran for GOP. Opened up some eyes. We attracting young voters, trying to keep young people in the state. Andrew Hemingway, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah,
Appreciate
definitely.
that.
We're
I
honored
also
to have
endorsed
you here.
him recently. So.
Yes, you did.
endorsed
Yes.
him too also. Good family man, family values.
Yes, he is.
Andrew, tell me why. Why does somebody like you with a young family want to run for governor?
Well, you know, my wife thinks I have a disease, and she might be partially right, but no, you know, I think that our state sits at a very, you know, decision time. You know, I think we sit at a crossroads as a state, and over the last 10 years we have had consistent Democrat governors, and today we are starting to bear the fruits of those 10 years of Democrat policies, and we are starting to see that, and we see budget shortfalls, we see a failing educational system, we see a failing healthcare system around our state with limited access and closing hospitals. We see trouble on almost every single front as we look around the state of New Hampshire. And one of the big reasons why I'm running is because we have, even larger than our financial challenges, is our demographic challenges. We are one of the fastest aging states in the country. And we've got to start to retain some of our young people in our state for fiscal reasons, so that we can, you know, pay for a lot of these services, but also because we need young families in our state. And we have traditionally been, you know, a state when you look at our history, a state which had, you know, high technology jobs, early 90s, late 80s. We were one of the fastest growing high-tech communities in the country. We had jobs here that were attracting young people and young families who were growing and prospering here in the state. And we've lost that because of our property taxes, because of our business taxes. You know, across the board, over the last 10 years, we've increased taxes 120 times. Taxes and fees, different things. And what we are doing is we're pushing businesses out of our state. We're pushing the young people out of our state.
Right.
And I'm running to try and reverse that trend.
You know, that's awesome. You know, Dan and I, we keep track of the numbers here in the economy here in New Hampshire. You know, because I know we had a discussion before on the 4.2.
Yes.
It's terrible.
Yes,
That's not good. We got a lot of people unemployed.
absolutely.
How are you going to bring jobs?
Sure.
Everyone thinks it's the government's responsibility. How are you going to help and bring jobs to New Hampshire?
Right. I think the number one way that we can start to see our economy get back to work, and just like you're saying, it's not the governor's job to create jobs, right? As a small business owner and growing up in the home of a small business owner in New Hampshire, I have a very intimate knowledge of New Hampshire's economy. I was born and raised here. You know, I know New Hampshire. I'm not flown in from some other state or, you know, representing some big business, right? You and Dan both know from being in Concord, it's always the small business owner that gets trampled on. Every single time. The big business guys, do they come in with lobbyists? Of course they do, right? You guys see them, you pass them in the hallways all the time.
Big time. They're
There's
always trying to work us.
Right, there's a voice for big business all the time. But who represents the plumber down the road here? Or the contractor, the electrician, or the mechanic, right? Who represents those folks? They don't have a voice. And when the bill comes up in Concord, they can't get off the job to go up there and try and voice their opinion. So what I'm trying to do is represent those. individuals. How do we bring our economy back into health, prospering, allowing for there to be jobs and growing businesses? We get the government out of the way. You know, we stop stifling this innovation. Today in New Hampshire, we have the highest corporate tax rate in the country, higher than Massachusetts.
Right.
There's a reason why when you head down 28 South and you go across this border, you see technology companies in Massachusetts, just across the border.
Lynch? Lynch was the governor for what, 8 years?
8 years.
8 years, now you got Hassan for 2 years.
Correct.
You know, I read a report that came out that showed New Hampshire's economy is the war. And when I say that, we have not grown.
That's right.
We've been stagnant for 10 years.
Absolutely stagnant. That's
I mean,
right.
I don't understand it. Dan, I know you had a couple of questions.
I think part of that stagnation that we've seen is because, not because New Hampshire's a bad place to do business necessarily or a bad place to live. We all know it's a great place to live and raise your kids. And in fact, I think Forbes rated us the #1 state in the union recently to raise children.
Raise children, right.
But the problem is where we're losing the battle is when the government's organization, DREAD, drops the ball in attracting businesses to come here.
Sure.
Recently we saw in the news during this last term, both Amazon and Boeing were putting up plants and looking to open distribution centers or manufacturing centers in states, and we lost both of those fights to, or DREAD, and even DREAD lost
Bill
both
O'Brien
of those
went
fights.
after Amazon to try to get them here.
To right-to-work states.
You brought it up.
Right-to-work states is where we lost it to. What can we do to improve the environment here to attract those businesses?
Even our own, even manufacturers in our own state. And you know, both of you know that I was involved in the right to work battle a couple of years ago. We were there, we were fighting. I was rallying ground troops, and we were trying to do everything we could to push that over the line. So it's an important issue to me. It's something which I've been active on, leading on. But it wasn't really something that I really resounded, with me personally. I wasn't really passionate about until I went and I sat down with Ruger. And Ruger, employs over 1,500 people now over in the Claremont, Newport, London area. A huge, huge employer, a huge, very important piece of our economy in our state. And I sat down with them and they said, look, we just opened a large plant in North Carolina. And I said, why'd you choose North Carolina? #1 reason, because they're a right-to-work state. #1 reason. And it started to hit me. Well, then we went to another manufacturer, more plants, more big, they all said right to work's the most important thing to us. Right to work.
And you know the thing,
vital.
I'm confused. I got the utmost respect from the union. I grew up in a union family.
Yes.
But what I don't understand here in New Hampshire, why are the unions fighting people getting jobs? They have their jobs. The unions are set up here in New Hampshire. Why would you want to stop other people sitting at home for these, attracting companies to come in and put these people to work?
Right, and this is nothing more than union bosses who are doing everything in their power to retain, their little fiefdom and to build their little empire. That's all that this is. That's all that we're trying to protect. This has nothing to do with the average worker. In fact, right to work proves that there's more jobs, right? If we can pass this, we can get more people employed, more people working, more competitive wages. All of that drives wages up. This is the lie that they love to tell. The right to work for less is their mantra, right? It is a bold-faced lie. There's no economic data to back that up. All it is about union bosses, the fat cats who sit at the very top of this pyramid, trying to continue to pad their pockets and pad their power. We need to stop
Half the union
it.
bosses in Massachusetts are sitting in jail.
Yeah.
Cashman and a few others there that for embezzlement in the country, and it's gone on. All you got to do is do a Google search on this stuff.
Right.
It's all over the country.
Right. The other thing is, why is it that only right to work do they bus all these people in from Massachusetts?
I don't understand it.
Every other important legislation that we talk about,
Right.
do they bus people in from Massachusetts? No. Do they key state representatives' cars? Do they slash tires?
kidding.
No. Only when we talk about union
I
stuff.
don't understand that. All the Massachusetts cars I see in Rhode Island, what a disgrace that is.
We actually had to put a surveillance system in the state rep's parking garage because of so many vehicles being vandalized during the right to work
Right.
day.
Only about
Right.
right to work.
And it was only during the time that we were debating right to work.
That's
And
it.
they're
That those
vicious.
things
They
occurred.
got in my face. I stood my ground right there at the State House. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
you were there when I went back and forth with them over an issue. Why would you deny a mom? Tedeschi's up the road. When there's they have a job open. They've put it out looking for somebody at minimum wage or $8.50 or whatever it is an hour.
Right.
They get so many resumes that come in. We have so many moms that want mom hours.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we want to attract businesses? They say, oh, it's low wages.
Right.
Well, I disagree there because you got engineers, carpenters, plumbers. You do have street sweepers. Yeah, you do. You got solderers or different thing in manufacturing.
Right.
But still, they're jobs.
But there's nothing wrong with a low wage, low skill job. There are people in our economy who need those types of jobs.
Right.
There's a lot of kids who come out of high school or come out of college
Right.
who need that first job. And when you look at all of the economic data, the importance of that first job, getting your foot in the door, is vitally important.
Right.
Did we all start at the executive level? No, right?
Right.
We all start out at the bottom. You've got to start out there. Well, if we eliminate that bottom level of jobs, then where do we go from there? How do you learn some of those necessary
Yeah.
skills in order to move up? That is a piece which is missing right now in New Hampshire's economy that's vitally important to the long-term health and well-being of our
Well,
economy.
like here in Londonderry, our Market Basket, a lot of our young people, young kids in high school that work at Market Basket, and our seniors. I'm the chairman of the Elders Affairs Committee here in
Yes.
town. And we have seniors that work at Market Basket at night, to help pay off their taxes and stuff. And they're all out of a job now.
Yep.
Right.
And
right.
that's a shame.
It is.
I mean, I stay out of that fight because it's a free market
That's right.
issue.
That's right.
I don't, but the bottom line is they were employing kids that are in school,
Yes.
teaching them.
But I think there's a good lesson to learn, a good business lesson to learn from the whole Market Basket debate.
Oh, without a doubt.
Arthur T. DeMoulas took care of his employees.
That's right.
And they didn't need a union. And
Yeah.
they told, actually, the protesters actually told the union, they offered a union up, and they said, no, we don't need you, thanks.
That's right.
And it's because Arthur T. DeMoulas did the right thing, and he took care of his people, he paid
Yeah.
them a living wage, and he had a moral responsibility to take care of his people.
And
And when his board got greedy, that's what caused all this problem.
That's right. And them people have been working there for years.
They have.
But
And
let's
it didn't need government interference to do
right.
it.
Right.
Since we're talking government interference here, let's move on. I know I've heard you speak many times that I'm impressed with on how you talk about regulations that are on
Yeah.
the business, on how you want to work with the small business and the BET tax. Can you go
Yes.
into that a little?
Sure. I mean, I think there are two main things that are holding back our state's economy. And I know this is going to sound like a broken drum, and it's something we always talk about, but it's the reality of the situation. That is, we have high taxation and we have too much regulation. On the regulation side, let me tell you a little anecdote, and you both know this, but I don't know how many of our viewers at home do. The number of hours of training to become a certified EMT is something around 30, between 30 and 50. Certified hours, 30 to 50 hours, right? And the EMT is an important job. First responder,
Right.
they've got to know what they're doing, right? People's lives literally depend on their ability. Do you know how many hours it takes to be trained, and it's certified hours by the board, to become a trained hairdresser?
I know it's in the
I
hundreds.
think it's like,
We've talked
100,
about
yeah.
this in the state
It was,
legislature.
Bill came
It's
up.
close to 700 hours.
That's right, yes. The schools are killing, making
700
making a killing,
hours?
It's a stark example.
Right.
It's a
to
stark
bec-
contrast.
Right. So I mean, my wife might argue that the hairdresser is a life or death situation,
Right,
right?
yeah.
I mean, we may be able to
That's
make
right.
that
You got to
argument.
know how to define colors
But
and everything.
that is the type of regulation that is being placed. And what's happening is we see industry today using legislation to protect themselves, to keep people from entering into the field. It's prohibitively expensive to become a hairdresser today, to become a barber. Something
Right.
as simple as that, and not to undermine the skill that it takes to do that and to do that well. But do we really need that many credit hours in order to do that? And this is the type of regulation we see in our state. We have reached a point of imbalance, and business is reacting to it. Business is pushing away from it, going somewhere else.
Right.
And that ultimately, again, hurts the small business owner. The big businesses have their lawyers and are able to work around it.
Right.
On the taxation side, this is something which is very complicated for a small business owner in New Hampshire to try and figure out the BPT or the BET and which one cancels out which one, and how do we, what are the percentages, and the BPT has lots of loopholes, and do I apply to, right? So
Right.
you have to go to an accountant. Every small business owner in New Hampshire has to use an accountant.
Right.
Well, that's $500, $600, $700 that the small business owner has to pay. So what we've done is we've eliminated the BPT, the BET, and the MET, Medicaid Enhancement Tax, and we have created and proposed one simple, flat, business flat tax of 2%. It's based upon wages paid, interest paid, and dividends paid. It's a flat 2% tax. Easy to figure. You take those three numbers times 2%, that's the tax that you owe. We've also decreased the interest and dividends tax from 5.5% to 2%. What that does is allows those individuals, because if you're paying interest and dividends tax, you have some investments, right? those are the types of people who are looking to make investments into New Hampshire's small businesses. We can stimulate that investment into our economy. And then what we've done on the flat tax side for manufacturing companies, because we need manufacturing in the state,
Right.
is we've allowed for what we call immediate expensing. So what this does is when you make a large capital purchase today, you have depreciation over a number of years that you can write off maximum. We're allowing 100% depreciation on day one, so instantly, and it's an immediate tax credit. So if you are a manufacturer and you go out and you buy $1 million worth of machinery, that's immediate expensing. You can write all of it off on day one. That incentivizes people to go out and start to make these capital purchases. That's especially helpful in the manufacturing industry. So what we're trying to do is free up this capital. And as we free up that capital, as we lower the tax rate, as we lower the regulation, this is what is needed ultimately to make New Hampshire's economy back.
You know,
back
here
on
in
track.
here in Londonderry, we have over 1,000 acres of land at the Pettingill.
Yes.
I'm a true believer that the free market will build, because even on a great economy, nobody built up near the on these 1,000 acres. Now we're starting to see businesses come in.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're looking for is probably on these grants that come out to help build the infrastructure on Pettingill. So we're hoping as the governor down the road, because that's going to build up the Manchester
Absolutely.
airport area.
Absolutely.
And, you know, 3/4 of that airport is in Londonderry.
Absolutely.
So we're definitely going to need your help as the governor to maybe take a look and entice businesses to come in and build around our airport.
This is, in my opinion, the most important job that New Hampshire's governor can do. You know, we all know that legislatively, the amount of power that they have is very limited. I mean, you have to get a written permission and have an executive counselor hold you as you go to the bathroom. I mean, you can hardly do anything, right, without somebody else. It's a very limited position. But what it does give you, though, is the ability to get into boardrooms all over this country and to convince these business owners and make the case that they need to move to New Hampshire. We need to fix our regulation and business taxation structure. But the 1,000 acres you're talking about, I've often referred to it as Technology Park, right? I've seen this area. I've been there. We've done the tours with it. I've worked with experts like Gary O'Neill. Senator Carson, obviously, is very passionate about this area. We will have the infrastructure built to that park as governor. I promise you, we will absolutely make sure that all of the infrastructure needs are going to be built there. I want fiber optic cable to come through there. There is opportunity to get high-tech companies based there who employ younger-age workers at really great salaries. They pay these kids unbelievable wages, right? We should see that as places where companies come and place their R&D departments. There is opportunity here. One of the things, Al, that I've been talking about is in Dartmouth College, we have the #1 venture capital school in the country and competitive in the world. More venture capitalists graduate from Dartmouth College. And in New Hampshire and just across the border in MIT and all the schools we have an enormous brain trust. So if we have the money and the brains, right here in our hand, right in front of us, why isn't New Hampshire full?
That's right.
Of technology startups.
Wrong.
Why aren't we full? Why do they have to go to California to develop?
Because we don't have a governor that understands the IT, the technology, in today's technology and how to look towards the future. If you look at Hassan and you look at Lynch, they did nothing. They weren't out in the front there kicking in doors.
That's right.
You got a guy right now who is a Marine who I got the utmost respect for running for governor. But the thing is, when he was a CEO, he was giving money to another party and everything else. And I have some issues on family values. So naturally, I can't go that way, and why we stood up for a Liberty guy like yourself who wants people to grow. You know what I mean? And I'm impressed with you because you've been at the State House. I've been up there 8 years. I've seen you over and over fighting and testifying on bills. I haven't seen any of these other candidates up there speaking on bills. All of a sudden, they show up and want to be governor. Where have you been in the battle to try to build the economy in New Hampshire? That's my thing.
I think it's a good point because they're kind of Johnny come lately, and he's talking about the limited powers of the executive office.
Yes.
Al and I have seen in the past 2 years 5 bills come through the legislature that are hostile towards people's Second Amendment, both federal and state, enshrined in our constitutions. And at the federal level, there's been some attempts to obfuscate and obviate the Second Amendment. specifically, there's been a hostile environment towards manufacturers in some of these other states, like Colorado, Magpul. They try to chase them away. We saw it. Ruger, like you mentioned earlier, was talking about opening another factory. They ended up opening it in another state, and you mentioned right to work.
Right.
But most of these other companies, like Beretta, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, are leaving New York State because they're hostile towards people's Second Amendment. And these companies are scared that they're going to have to move at some other less opportune time.
Yes.
And they're being scared by the legislatures. They're being scared by the hostile environment coming from the executive offices in these states.
Yep.
What can you do as governor to prevent this hostile environment towards the Second Amendment from actually impacting us not only in our rights, but economically as well?
Well, I'll tell you, we are going to do everything in our power to uphold our state and federal constitution, right? I mean, I think that's part of the job of the governor, is to demand, the allegiance to our state constitution. And in that, would settle the regulatory environment, would settle the sort of the uneasiness. And then what we can do is we can go out and we can recruit these businesses. Hey, look, if they're getting kicked out of Connecticut or out of upstate New York, why not stay in New England?
That's right.
A lot of your workforce would stay here.
That's
Instead, they're moving to Alabama, where they're losing thousands of workers. Come to New Hampshire, right? We can do that. We can work on that. And they're going to know that in New Hampshire we're safe. On Saturday, we're having a 2A day, a celebration. This tells you where I stand on the Second Amendment. We're celebrating it on Saturday at the Londonderry Fishing Game Club. Excellent. It's from 11 to 2 o'clock. We'll have machine gun shoots. We're just for showing up. We're giving you a door prize of a Springfield 9mm. We're raffling off an AR-15. It's going to be a great time.
That's awesome. I wish I could get over there because that's our old home day, and we have the Republican booth. Hopefully, you're going to be in that parade?
I'm going to walk in the parade.
Awesome.
Yep.
I mean, I normally myself, even though I'm elected official, I don't call myself a politician because that means I have to tell people what they want to hear.
Yes.
And that's not me.
Yes.
So I stick with the veterans every time, and I always march. I don't march as their representative.
Yep.
But anyways, I wanted to touch something because we got a couple minutes here. I went to your website. I was very impressed there on your patients first, your students first, your privacy first.
Yes.
A very impressive area, and I'm hoping that you could get into a little bit more on why.
Sure.
And Common Core too.
Yes.
Student.
Well, so just like it's actually a perfect segue. I am so sick of politicians who just run around. All they can offer up is campaign talking points. There's no substance.
Right.
There's nothing there, right? So what we're doing is we're putting forward real solutions, real doable solutions to some of our state's big challenges. I mean, it's really that simple. It's saying, hey, here's education. So what's important in education? So our platform's named Solutions First, and it starts with students first. I believe economic development begins in the classroom. We need more local control. We need to get the state and federal government out of it, including Common Core. We need local control. We need to empower local school boards. We need to empower parents. We've got some really interesting, I think, proposals which will be coming out here in the next couple of days around education specifically to empower local school boards and empower parents and re-engage them. We need to expand opportunities like we have in the educational tax credit program, allowing for school choice. We should be proponents of charter schools and online schools.
Competition,
and
I don't understand it.
It's that simple.
Right.
We need competition in this space. Competition always drives down the cost and always improves the quality. I believe that we can do that. Our governor, instead, is suing this educational tax credit program, using valuable state resources to try and shut those off.
I could not believe Chris Pappas, first of all, our executive counselor.
Yes.
In 2 years, he's never invited any of us to any of his meetings or anything.
Oh, I get emails.
You get emails? Yeah, I get that because that's Ray Resurrec's secretary, who we're still on the mailing list. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm hoping that you from our area get a decent executive council to work with you.
Yes.
Because Chris Pappas is not working with the Republicans.
Right.
Resurrec used to go with the Republicans and Democrats and invite you to his meetings and everything else. And I've always seen Democrats. So, and I'm glad to see you work with everybody.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. On health care, it's a simple supply and demand issue. When we passed Obamacare and then Medicaid expansion, what we did was we exponentially increased demand.
Right.
At the same time, we're decreasing supply. We're pushing, we're closing hospitals, right? We're doing all these things. So what we've done on the supply side is to say we need to, number one, remove the certificate of need board. Right now, hospital executives determine whether or not there's enough need for other hospitals. The Cancer Centers of America wanted to come to New Hampshire, wanted to
right,
build a
and it was
world-class
stopped.
facility.
You ain't
They
kidding.
couldn't come because certificate of
supported
need
that.
board.
That's right.
Let's get rid of that
That's
needless
ridiculous.
board. That's a
Right.
regulation.
Hey,
That
you know
opens
something?
up
You just a
hospitals.
bell just went off in my head about Governor Hassan. Right now, she's failing to release the numbers on the budget.
That's
Rumor
right.
has it that she's put us in the hole and she's spending more money.
Of course.
$38 million that going to Medicaid expansion.
Yes.
That shouldn't be costing the state a dime.
Which we fought.
Which we fought.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm glad you leading the charge there in demanding that she release the numbers.
Well, you know, transparency is a real problem for this administration. We know nothing about what's happening with the numbers. Also, something we don't know anything about is how many children have been placed here by the federal government into our state.
Right.
You know, and where are they? We
Right.
know we slipped out 13 children, which Governor Hassan said she knew nothing about. How can you not know
Right.
anything about this as governor? How are you not beating down the door to
Right.
find out where we are?
I'm
and
the
it's this
senior-
lack of transparency.
That's right. I'm the senior Republican on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs. I'm the former chairman. Not one message or anything has come to my committee
Right.
on any of this stuff going on. We've been in the blind on this here.
Absolutely.
And it's a joy. Andrew, go ahead.
You talk about politicians who wet their finger and stick it in the air and then decide where they stand. I've seen multiple instances, as I'm sure you have, recently regarding these refugee placements, these unauthorized or unnotified refugee placements, where there's Democrat elected officials in blue states who are led by their constituents to stop this.
Yes.
Led by their constituents.
disagree.
So talk about following the people instead of leading from the front, right?
Right.
They're getting,
Right.
and the people are just mad as heck about this.
That's right. And this is what, this is, let me just say this at the end. We need a governor who understands New Hampshire, who understands where we have been, where we are going, who has a very clear vision for the future, and can put the right conservative principles into place. Work with the legislature, work with the Senate, and develop a consensus around those conservative ideals. Instead, what we have today is a Washington run, someone who is desperate to get to the next level
Right.
in her own political career, someone who is sold out to the Democrat establishment. That is what we have in Governor Hassan. And we have got to stop that, because ultimately that is destroying our state.
That's right. Andrew, we're running out of time, and I'm sure most of the Londonderry residents in other areas throughout the state know that our governor was the queen of LLC tax,
Yes.
campground tax,
Yes.
all these other taxes that
Any
were put.
number of taxes.
Okay, but anyways, how do people get in touch with Andrew Hemingway if they want to help with your campaign?
Sure, they can visit my website, which is just my name, andrewhemingway.com. They can volunteer, they can donate, which would be fantastic. They can visit my Facebook page, which is Hemingway4Gov, or on Twitter, they can just search Andrew Hemingway. All of those ways are great ways to get in touch
Well,
with us.
Andrew, it's great to have you.
Thank you very much.
And what we're going to do, we're going to take a 2-minute break, and we'll be right back with a Executive Council counselor candidate, Jim Adams.
Great.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
Andrew.
watching.
Thank you.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, welcome back to Who's Looking Out for You. And I'm Al Baldessau, and my good buddy, fellow Marine Dan Tamburello. Some of you are probably wondering, why does Al Baldessau have a Dunkin' Donuts coffee sitting on his show and not a regular cup of coffee?
I asked you that very
You asked me
question
that
when I walked in
question.
here.
But what I wanted to do, I wanted to show that I stopped and supported the local business before I came here. Because the Koreas who own the Dunkin' Donuts in town, they grew up in my neighborhood, in our neighborhood in Cambridge, Mass. And very well-to-do family. They always donate back to the community. So I always support their Dunkin' Donuts. That's the reason why I got that, by the way. But anyways, hey, we got a special guest here today. I'm honored to have him here. And, you know, as Marines, we always yell, corpsman up.
We love having a corpsman
We
around,
love having a
that's
corpsman.
for sure.
Yeah, Navy corpsman. Did a tour in Vietnam. He served with the field hospital in Da Nang. And Londonderry has a lot of, you know, veterans in our town there. And he was in the Navy from 68 to 72. Of course, we all know the Marines come under the Department of Navy. We're the men's department.
That's right.
But we consider, you know, corpsmen as Marines. Jim is running for executive council against
Thank you,
Chris
Bo.
Pappas, of a guy who never invites us to any of his meetings, unlike Wazorek, who invited Republicans and Democrats.
I'm actually all broken up over that, just so you know.
Are you?
Yeah.
You got feelings hurt and
I
everything?
do.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, And I guess I've done a lot of homework on Mr. Pappas and the Executive Council. I'm very, very fortunate and blessed because Ray Wazorek is he's the head of my steering committee, leading my campaign. And Ed Rinker, the former counselor before, I guess, Tom Colantuno, he's on my team as well. And they all believe, as I do, that we represent 250,000 people in District 4. Not a handful of special interests.
Right.
And some folks don't understand that. And I also believe that we try and compromise, and working together is paramount to getting things done. But if you vote with the governor 100% of the time, you're a rubber stamp and you're not representing 250,000 people. And that is very, very disappointing.
You know, I got something that I got to get off my chest that really peed me off recently with Chris Pappas in the Executive Council. There is a guy that they put on the Education Committee who's taken the state to court, I believe, and involved with on the Common Core and support and everything else. What a disgrace that they put him into the education. Can you touch on this guy, Duncan? I mean, I really was shocked that they put him in there.
This falls directly under, in fact, it's on the top of the list under the heading of you can't make this stuff up. This man is involved in litigation and not in, in another part of the state, a truck ran over his dog or something.
Right.
This is to do with what I thought was a wonderfully thought out bill that the representatives put together in the last session to allow businesses to put money aside for folks who would like to send a child to charter school who don't have the money to do that.
That's right. I apologize. It wasn't Common Core. It was on the education tax credits.
It was an outstanding thing. He sues it because he said, I don't want money going to religious schools. That's not what it's designed for. But the bottom line is he's actively involved in litigation. And this man in no way should have been nominated. Talk about putting the fox in the hen house. And the worst thing about it is that I was at that meeting and I sat right behind Mr. Pappas, and all of the counselors' phones were ringing off the hook. He said I had 100 and some odd calls, but I talked to Mr. Duncan and he said he was none of the things that everybody said he was, so I'm going to vote for him. Well, 100 and some odd people called him and said, don't vote for this guy because you don't want to do this. And I did some further research and found out over the past few years, Mr. Duncan has donated $29,000.
That's what I heard. He bought that job.
Democratic
That's right.
State Committee. So evidently Maggie feels that a seat on the Department of Education has cost about $29,000. Representing all of the people in District 4, I would have definitely voted against it. First of all, it was just so counterintuitive to have a man who's suing the state put on that same board.
That makes no sense. I don't understand. We raised hell. Actually, a bunch of us sent the letter. We signed off on a letter to the governor, and they didn't listen to any of us. Chris Pappas, I don't know where he's been because he don't listen to us anyways. So, and I don't even think he won in Londonderry anyway.
He votes with Maggie 100% of the time. That means to me, he is not representing 250,000 people.
That's right.
He's representing her and the special interest.
Dan, another thing too, which I'm sure we're going to ask Jim right now, is on we voted and fought on the floor on the Medicaid expansion, because what's going to happen is next year we're going to have to make a vote. And I'm hearing the governor in the Executive Council, whatever, didn't approve any waivers yet to go to Washington.
Yeah, and I've also heard that Medicaid expansion vote, which Al and I actively fought, is actually putting the governor's budget in the hole, or close to $40 million.
So my question is basically, are you going to be able to, as an Executive Council, hold her accountable to release her numbers, tell us what's going on with Medicaid expansion, the contracts, how much money, taxpayers' money, is she spending that we did not authorize?
That is the job of the Executive Council. The Executive Council are the eyes and ears for the voters next to the governor on that committee. So many people call it the Governor's Council. It is not. It is the Executive Council.
That's right.
And I think because it's been so many, it's been there for over almost 300 years, that's why we've never had a governor incarcerated or walked out of the office in cuffs like other states have, because they are the check and balance. Right. And when you have three people who are completely committed to the same nonsense, then you don't have the check and the balance. And I'm believing right now, because the contract, a $300 million contract, was voted on 2 weeks ago without one counselor having a chance to read it. Chris Sununu, the counselor from District 3, he made the motion, which is standard procedure in my opinion, to table that and look at it in either 2 weeks or 4 weeks later after everybody's had a chance to read it. 175 pages. Mr. Pappas made a motion to give Mr. Sununu 15 minutes to read it.
Wow.
175 pages. And Chris had a good point.
Right.
What happens if on page 29 or 172 that it says that if the debt continues to grow by trillions, the national debt, then New Hampshire's on the hook to do it by itself? Nobody read it. They signed it. Sounds a lot like Obamacare. Pelosi
Right.
said, let's read it when we, yeah.
After you
so they
voted
did
it.
this.
Pass it to find out
Right.
what's in it.
Exactly. So
Wow.
they did the same thing over here. I would have immediately, I would have concurred with Sununu, let's read this thing. But most importantly, the reason they had to push it as the debate went on, the governor was and she said, we've got to get this thing going. That would lead one to wonder if there's other funds being moved around, because they had already started this road. They had 11,000 people. They had nothing to, as you mentioned clearly, there was nothing in the budget for that. This money was slow in coming. Was there some things going on? That needs to be investigated.
The governor's refusing to release the numbers. I know Senator Sharon Carson is leading the charge along with some others on trying to get the numbers out there to see, because we understand, or we're hearing, she spent $38 million unfunded, you know, that from another
Exactly.
area that she had no authority to spend. And I'm hoping that Chris Pappas, we send him packing, send him back to his job, and we get somebody in there who cares about the good of the people of New Hampshire and not about look at me.
I
You know.
appreciate that.
So, you know, it's good to see that you're stepping up. Medicaid expansion, contracts.
It's huge, and
How do-
that contract never should have been approved the way it was, because you've got to vet every contract, and I'm a firm believer, and I used
How do
to
we stop it?
Whether we stop it by getting, you got to have another Republican on there.
Are you going to push with us legislators next year to vote down? Because if a waiver doesn't come in the end of in 2015, then we're able to vote it down and get rid of it. If the Republicans have the House and the Senate, we could stop it and hopefully have an override veto.
The best, I will completely, because I believe that the solutions in this state need to come from the bottom up. Who knows better than the people in the state? Why can't we set up our own insurance? I think that the state
agree.
Senator Morse, the Senate President Morse had a great idea. Let's go forward and try and get these private companies to insure them, and then we take care of the offset. And that's the way to do this. We don't need these bureaucrats telling us, especially with these folks, and I've asked the question to every Democrat that gets in my face, how many people have been turned away from an emergency room in the state of New Hampshire?
Right.
And the answer is zero. They're all being taken care of. Let's do it the right way instead of the one size that fits all approach.
It don't work.
Usually fits no one.
Did you watch the Fox special they had on? They used New Hampshire.
It was outstanding.
I was very impressed with that because somebody finally brought out the truth on what Governor Shaheen did, you know, as the governor, and what she did as a state senator, and as a governor with the insurance companies, forced them all out, forced the monopoly, forced everyone's costs to go up. And I don't understand how the Democrats keep saying, this is a great thing, oh, this is beautiful, everybody's going to get insured. Somebody has to pay.
It's a train wreck, and Gene Shaheen needs
Right.
to go, period.
What do you think, Dan? You think this is leading us down the road to a sales tax or payroll tax?
I think that's very possible. I mean, how are you going to pay for all of this if you've got all these grand ideas that have no way to fund them? And she put her budget forward, assuming that gambling was going to get passed.
Exactly.
And how many? And I know Al and I
$80
actually.
million.
And Al and I,
yeah.
it's one of the few issues Al and I
right.
disagree on
Right.
is expanded gambling. But how are you going to count it? Let's put it in the cart. That's the proverbial cart before the horse, right? I mean, how are you going to
That's right.
budget for something that's not even passed
How can you
yet?
how can you put something in the budget that's illegal? I mean, there's no common sense whatsoever
No,
right there.
nothing whatsoever. Everything she's done, what they said about transparency and Chris Pappas like a little puppet, just following along and saying yes, yes, yes. Everything she's doing, that's wrong. I just don't understand
Another
it.
thing I like to point out about this Obamacare thing. Are you a Star Trek fan by any chance?
Yes, I was older than you, but I do. I remember it.
So you're familiar with when Mr. Spock says the good of the many outweigh the good of the few or the one? Obamacare has done exactly opposite that. We've
Exactly.
sacrificed 80% of the people in this country
That's
who
right.
had decent health care to care for the
A
30%
small-
who didn't have it. And in return now, only about 10 or 15% of the people who didn't have it actually wanted it.
Exactly.
10
And now
hospitals.
everybody has to pay
10
for it.
hospitals in New Hampshire
It's a
are
shame.
not covered.
And when you look at the real numbers, that come November 20th, 25th, and there's after the elections are over, which is isn't that a little strange? Then a lot of people, thousands of New Hampshire residents are going to get their notice that their insurance has been canceled. You can't make, this is just, no, there's no transparency here, and nobody's looking out. Let me rephrase that. The Democrats are not looking out for the people in the state
That's
of New
right.
Hampshire. They're looking out for their special interest.
They
If
have
you
an
look-
agenda, and that
That's right.
overrides
Everything.
practicality, rationality, anything else. Agenda is first,
right.
and the means always the ends always justifies the means for them.
Jim, you know, if they're looking out for the people, why would you vote in a gas tax that goes after the middle class and low income? Why would you vote in a 20-cent cigarette tax that goes after, you know what I mean, low income and middle class? If you've got deep pockets, you don't care. I don't know if you're aware. You maybe jump in if. Where 18 cents tax that we have right now in the gas tax is being siphoned. Almost 28% of that money is going off in conservation, state police, the academy, and there's a couple other areas. When that 100% of that money is going to gas tax, then if we see the roads needing work, I'll support a tax.
So we actually said,
But until then,
and
Right.
Bill O'Brien had the
I
leaky
co-sponsored
bucket,
the,
right?
his
The
amendment.
leaky
That's
bucket
right.
amendment, which I think we both co-sponsored. And we pointed out, hey, if you take all this money and put it where it's supposed to go, we probably won't have to raise the gas tax. But we all understand the need that you have to have government services, and there's certain government services you have to have, and they have to be paid for, and everybody uses the roads. So if we use all the money the way it was supposed to be used, and then we find out, hey, we're using it efficiently and we need to raise it a couple cents, then we can talk about it.
That's right,
But they
yes.
wouldn't even discuss that
Nope.
with us.
They even try to keep it quiet. $38 million Governor Lynch and the Democrats took out of the gas tax in 2010 for operational expense. Did you know that?
Exactly, and that's the, thank you for serving up this softball. That is the purview of the Executive
That's
Council.
right.
The diversion of that money, and I've heard, Ray gave me a wonderful anecdotal story that he was, when he was sitting as a representative for as the counselor for District 4, a bill came through that they wanted, I think it was thousands of dollars for new rugs in the courthouse. I think it might have been Hillsborough Courthouse. And he saw it, he followed it down, and the money was coming from the gas tax. He said, what are you talking about? Well, he said, the people who get stopped and blah, blah. He said, no, that's for roads and bridges. And he
Right.
said, you go find the money somewhere else. And that would be my push. Hey, how can you possibly have this increase when there is, as Bill said, a hole in the bucket? Let's stop the leak. Now, there's a certain amount of money that has to be utilized for the state police, and there's other issues there, but maybe some of those things need to be on budget
You know, I
and
think
not
that-
coming out of the gas tax.
The
Right.
state police issue is debatable and certainly within reason, right?
Right.
I mean, the primary responsibility of our state police is they patrol the highways.
Exactly.
You know, and you got to have safety. So we could talk about that, and I might even agree to that. But all these other things that they divert the money to is just absolutely absurd.
It's unacceptable.
One thing I wanted to bring up to you here, I always carry the U.S. Constitution, I carry the New Hampshire. One of the things I wanted to bring up under the General Court, Article 2, Legislative, how constituted. The supreme legislative power within the state shall be vested in the Senate and the House of Representatives, each of which shall have a negative on the other. Now, we pass the laws in the budget and everything else, and the executive, council, does the contracts and does all the stuff and keeps the governor in check. My issue here is now, under Lynch and now under Hassan, is the vetting judges. Liberal judges that are trying to make laws from the bench. What do you think about it? How are you going to fix that?
Each judge that comes before me, when I interview that judge, I will ask him or her, do you believe that the Constitution is what it is, or do you think that you have all sorts of parameters to interpret it? And if they think they can interpret it, then they're not getting my vote.
Right.
The people our forefathers who put that Constitution together, they were geniuses. They knew exactly what this country and state needed. And we don't need a judge to sit up there, well, he had a tough upbringing and blah, blah, blah. When you see some of these heinous criminals being released because the judge gave them a real, just easy sentence, those are the judges we've got to get off there and keep any further from coming on. All I want is a judge who is firm and fair and, most importantly, follows the Constitution.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we had passed a voter ID bill
right.
You're in my first term and a few years
Yep,
ago.
I was actually on the subcommittees for those, and I was sat on election law.
And the first time that it came up was somewhere over on the East Coast. A few students sued. They were helped by the ACLU.
Right.
They found the friendly judge. They were outside of jurisdiction. They actually had no standing, if you look at the case. And the judge overruled duly passed laws by the legislature, which Governor Lynch actually signed, if I remember correctly. And just now we have two classes of voters in this state, which no other state in the union has. You have people who move in from out of state and just feel like they want to vote here, and then you have everybody else who actually pays taxes and wants to vote here.
And I think it's a bit worse than that. I'm concerned that we have busloads of people coming to these, especially the presidential election. Everywhere, every polling place in the state of New Hampshire had tremendous, huge numbers of same-day registrants. And people didn't know, and some of them wouldn't show a license. I wonder why they wouldn't show their
right.
license.
And I understand affidavits were sent back and never returned. Never returned. That's right.
And I've called
right. Or they
numerous
returned,
times.
but they weren't returned by the people.
Exactly.
Because nobody was there.
And so they were just under 2,000 of those. And the Secretary of State turned those over to the Attorney General, and they hired one individual to go chase them down. And guess what? Have we heard a thing about it? I don't think so.
And they don't aggressively pursue this.
Exactly.
A.G. Delaney had a pitiful defense against the law, and he had to be dragged kicking and screaming to properly defend it. And this is somebody who is appointed by the governor and approved by the executive council. I mean, what can we do to prevent somebody from like this becoming attorney general who actually looks for the law?
Will you, as the executive council, vet, like, let's say the attorney general, he was the governor's treasurer, okay? He was the governor's finance chair when she was a Senate majority leader. Do you see what I'm saying? A lot of people. Will you vet all these issues?
Well, by all means, I believe, and I've talked to some of the former counselors, and they all believed that it's incumbent upon them, the 250,000 people in the district elected them, to do the due diligence when these individuals come through.
Right.
If you don't properly vet them, how would you know that this individual is going to be? Well, we know that if she's vetting them, they're probably very liberal. But you've got to also ask these important questions. Do you think that somebody can pull off 95, swing into Portsmouth and vote just because they feel like it? That's right. Pretty much the interpretation that he's saying right now. We ought to call them, remember the voter motor? We ought to call these mobile voters. They can come and go. And it's ridiculous.
I think, it makes me wonder, maybe we need to change and go to the motor voter, the one where you register at the DMV when you get your license.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to change that and take it out of the clerk's office.
We've got to do something, because right now it's getting impossible for a candidate to move forward and get elected fairly, because right now you've got to, and this all started when Jean Shaheen was governor. Remember when her daughter called her, I think it was Govey, and that's when they started to get the wave of the kids out of UNH.
Yeah.
And I talked to Senator Booton, and he stated that it was, I'm pretty sure he said well over 1,000 in Hooksett came from Southern New Hampshire University with huge buses. I think they were the school buses. I mean the college's buses with Obama banners all over the side of the. And they took them in there to vote.
Took them in. You ain't kidding.
That's not what the forefathers had in common. That was not their thought process. Let the taxpayer, the people who live here, the people who are going to end up paying for this, let them vote, and everyone else can sit on the sideline.
That's right.
And they can tout their candidates. They can do anything they want, but they don't cast a ballot.
They can cast in their own hometowns. Exactly. I agree, because what they don't realize, you just hit it right on the money, and it's the money, because they're voting on local funding, and somebody puts in something that they want to spend more money on, ends up getting passed. And they're putting taxpayers deeper and deeper in the hole, and it's a shame, and they have to pick it up. I want to go back to Medicaid expansion here. I know you've been a loud voice on trying to stop, the Medicaid expansion and the contract and everything else. Will you, as an executive council like Ray Burton and Reserve used to come down into the legislative process and other stuff there, will you come in and voice your opinion on some of these for the good of the people? Because you have a larger district than like Dan and I.
I certainly would, because you folks You folks, it reminds me of my days in the military. You guys are in the trenches.
Right.
And you're in there fighting hard every day for the taxpayer, for the people who are paying the bill. And it's incumbent upon the counselor of that same district, because in this district, there are numerous representatives and state senators. And you need the support of the counselors to get some of this message across, that these are the reasons you need to do this. Nobody's trying to take anyone's disenfranchise any voter. Anybody who needs to vote, who's lived here all their lives, we can get around that. But the people who are just transient voters, and as you said, they're setting up the spending for this state for years to come, and they don't even live here.
Right.
There's no ramifications, and I want to be the representative of the working men and women.
Right.
Someone said, well, the Republicans are always talking middle class. I'm talking about everybody who's a working man and woman, some of these folks working 2 jobs to keep their head above water, and to have people come in and change this healthcare business. I talked to a businessman in Bedford, and he told me that I think it was a 62-year-old man in his company was paying, and we'll use the number of maybe $350 a month right now for his insurance. When this all shook out with the Obamacare, the man now is paying, I think he's paying almost $1,500 a month, and the business is paying $2,000 a month. They can't afford it. And he said, what do I do with these people? I can't not insure my people. And everybody is up in arms about this. But once again, that was done under the auspices of one size fits all. It's good for everybody. But you've got to vet these things. The people of the state of New Hampshire need to know what the ramifications of all of this, everything for everybody without a little bit of sense as to how you're going to raise that money. That's the problem. And the liberals want to do that. Everything for everybody and no concept how they're going to pay for it.
Well, what do you think, Dan?
You know, I think Jim's got a good, mind on what the council is supposed to do, and I think I'd be looking out for the voters of our district.
Well, I'm glad him, like Andrew Hemingway there, know that it's not the government's job to create jobs. And, it's to make it easier for the for the entrepreneurs to, flourish and do their thing with less regulations and, and maybe vet contracts and, read them. Right. Right. And
one thing I find I've been doing my homework a lot over the last 4 to 6 years. The state has spent $68 million on tourism, travel and tourism, which is necessary because that's our life's blood. At the same time, they only spent $1.8 million on growing business. You're spot on. They don't focus on it. We've got to do what we've got to do to grow business, get more people in, more entrepreneurs in here, and stop trying to hit them over the knee every time with a baseball bat. We hobble them every time they come in.
I'll ask you a similar question I asked Andrew when he was here a few minutes ago. We've had, and we've seen across the country, a lot of state legislatures, even the federal government, acting with hostility towards Second Amendment-oriented manufacturers. Magpul was being chased out of Colorado. Kimber's being chased out of New York, and I think they've already moved, actually. Beretta, some other, Smith & Wesson, some other manufacturers. The governor has a council or a group that's supposed to attract business. They've failed miserably, especially at particularly in regard to the Second Amendment type gun manufacturers. Is the chairman of DRED, the people who she appoints to these, are they reviewed by the executive council?
Oh yes, all of the commissioners, all of the directors come before the executive council, and I would vet them once again. And really, I think there's some confusion because people say nobody else asks them any question when when they're actually being brought forward. That needs to be done prior to that.
Right.
You get them one-on-one, so there's no embarrassment for the individual, and you simply ask them these very hard questions. In Second Amendment, as we mentioned earlier, when I was 18 years old, I was willing to bet my life and lose my life to protect the Second Amendment and everything else that is so precious to this country.
You've served a few years in, one tour in Vietnam, a few years in the Navy. Jim, we're running out of time, and, it's great to have you on, and I was honored to have you here. And, of course, here with 3 veterans sitting on the stage.
There you go.
How do people get in touch with Jim Adams if they wanted to help you with your campaign?
JimAdams.org. It's my website. It's got all the information they need about me. If they'd like to, they can donate, and they can also find out what I really stand for, and the fact that my job is to represent them, the working men and women.
Well, that's awesome. Dan, you know, since you're co-host there the first time there, how do Londonderry residents get in touch with you that are watching this show?
The best way to get in touch with me is to contact me via email at dtamby@gmail.com. That's Delta Tango Alpha Mike Bravo India @gmail.com. Or you can call my house anytime and leave a message. The locals in Londonderry, 603-434-2940. If you don't get me or you get my wife, maybe you'll get my 11-year-old who's a lacrosse player, and you can see me out there. I'll be marching with the Londonderry Youth Lacrosse Association. I actually got 5 invitations.
Well, you're also a coaching on skiing, right?
Yeah, I teach skiing over at McIntyre Ski Area. My oldest has been a ski racer. He's also plays lacrosse. All my boys play lacrosse. And my middle son, Brock, plays football in town. He's in his 2nd season of contact football.
Oh, that's awesome.
And my youngest, who's 5, Adam, he plays flag football, so he's in his 1st season.
And not only are you
And I'm
defending
coaching
the
that as
country
well.
as a major in the Marine Corps Reserve, but you're also giving back to your community as a state representative. You're running for your 3rd term.
I am.
That's
3rd
awesome.
term, and proud to serve the community up there,
Outstanding.
and it's been truly an honor and a pleasure.
And I'm Al Baldessaro, and my website is www.albaldessaro.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. My home number is 425-6997. Or stop by my house on 41 Hall Road. If you see the car and the truck in the driveway, I'm home. Thank you for watching, and who's looking out for you, and we'll keep the facts coming.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.